It was a place full of life once, children's laughter echoing through the halls, their footsteps running through the corridors, their voices ringing with the innocence of youth. But all of that stopped abruptly. The doors were locked, the windows boarded up, and the playground stood still, abandoned. Now, in the silence that lingers, the forgotten walls hold memories of something darker. Something that was never meant to be forgotten. The school may have been left behind, but the secrets it holds are far from over. Secrets that only those brave enough to enter will ever understand. But ask yourself this: did they live to tell their story? Or did they become part of the mystery themselves? Before we begin, there's something you need to know. Most viewers make a big mistake. They forget to subscribe. And when they do, they miss out on the creepiest, most terrifying tales that only the bravest fans get to experience. Don't let that be you. Hit that subscribe button now, because what you're about to hear is just the beginning. And trust me, the darkness has much more to show. Now tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Drop a comment below, because the night is young, and the horror is only beginning. Let's dive in. The school had been left to decay, forgotten by the world outside, as if the doors had been sealed not just to protect it, but to keep whatever was left inside trapped. Years of neglect had stripped away its once vibrant walls, leaving only peeling paint and cracked tiles behind. The walls are covered in a thick layer of dust that has settled over everything like a shroud, smothering the echoes of voices that once filled the halls. But what happened here? How did this once thriving institution fall into ruin? Was it simply the slow collapse of a building long past its prime, a casualty of time and neglect? Or was there something far darker at play, something that drove the school to the brink of madness? The rumors are whispered in the towns nearby. The whispers of strange occurrences, unexplained disappearances, and things that should never be seen by human eyes. No one knows for sure why the doors were locked. No one can say when it all began. What we do know is that something inside, something hidden in the shadows, still lingers, waiting, watching, and it hasn't forgotten the secrets it holds. It wasn't long before a group of curious teenagers, eager to discover the secrets that lay behind the walls of the forgotten school, made their way to the crumbling building. Armed with nothing more than their phones, selfies, shaky camera footage, and a sense of youthful adventure, they stepped over the rusted threshold, unaware of the horrors that lay waiting for them. They thought they were just exploring an old, abandoned building, a place that no one cared to remember. But what they didn't know was that this school was no ordinary ruin. It was a place where something deeply unsettling, still lingered in the shadows, watching their every move. And it didn't want them there. As they crept through the decaying halls, their footsteps echoed too loudly, too sharply in the silence. The walls, once bright with color, now seemed to close in on them, as if the very structure of the building was alive. The cold air grew heavier with each step they took, and a sense of dread, thin and sharp, crawled beneath their skin. They could hear it now, the faintest creak from the upper floors, a soft scuffling sound, almost like dragging footsteps, though no one was visible. The group paused, exchanging uneasy glances. What was that? They chalked it up to the settling of the old building, or perhaps a rat scurrying through the walls. But something told them they weren't alone. The air in the hallways felt thick, charged, as if something unseen was watching them. And then, without warning, one of them, the bravest of the group, decided to explore deeper, to push further into the heart of the school. She walked toward the staircase, the sound of her shoes tapping against the dusty floor, a rhythm that seemed too deliberate. The others followed hesitantly, but as they reached the top of the stairs, their phones flickering nervously in their hands, the first truly disturbing event took place. The building seemed to breathe, as if it was alive, its walls groaning under some unseen pressure. And then the lights, flickering weakly at first, suddenly died, plunging them into total darkness. There, in the pitch black, the sound of something, or someone, moving in the shadows became undeniable. It was slow at first, methodical. The hair on the back of their necks stood up, each step echoing louder than the last. And then, just as suddenly as it had all started, a door, somewhere far down the hallway, slammed shut, the sound so deafening it sent them scrambling, hearts pounding. But when they turned to look, no one was there. No one but the darkness, thick and suffocating, closing in around them. As the teens hesitated, their nerves beginning to fray, something changed in the air. It wasn't just the darkness pressing down on them. It was something far more tangible. Something heavy, suffocating. They heard it before they saw it. A soft, Steady tap 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 echoed through the empty halls, so faint at first it could have been the wind or the building settling. But it wasn't. The sound grew louder, closer, each step deliberate, each echo filled with an unsettling rhythm that mirrored the beating of their hearts. They spun around, their phones lighting up the hallway with shaky beams, but there was nothing. No one. The hallway stretched on in eerie silence, but the unmistakable sound of footsteps continued to stalk them, circling closer with every passing second. The temperature seemed to drop. Suddenly, they could see their breath fogging in front of them. The cold wasn't just in the air, it was in their bones. As they moved down the corridor, the walls began to moan, their surface seeming to breathe with an unnatural life of its own. Whispers, faint at first, slithered from every corner, muttering words they couldn't understand. It was as if the building itself was alive, pressing in on them, trying to speak. Desperate to ignore the growing fear, they pressed on, but every whisper made their skin crawl. Was it the wind? Or was the school trying to tell them something? Something they weren't meant to know. Just when they thought the worst was over, the horror reached its peak. One of the teens, already shaken by the sounds and the oppressive atmosphere, stepped forward to investigate. She called out to the others, but when they turned to look, she was gone. Just gone. No scream. No struggle. Nothing. She had disappeared as if the school had swallowed her whole. The others scrambled, calling her name, their voices sharp with panic. They ran down the hall, shouting for her, their feet pounding the floor as they pushed open doors and searched every dark corner. But there was no sign of her, no clue as to where she could have gone. It was as though she had never existed. The school had taken her, and it wasn't giving her back. Then, just as they were about to turn back, a voice, soft and distant, called out from somewhere in the darkness. It was her voice. Faint, trembling, but unmistakable. They could hear her calling for help, but it sounded wrong, as if it wasn't her at all, but something using her voice. Something mimicking her every word. The group found themselves in a small room at the end of a long hallway, one that hadn't been on the map they'd seen when they entered the school. The door, which had appeared locked when they first tried it, was now open, as if inviting them inside. Desperation drove them into the room, and once they crossed the threshold, they realized too late what kind of trap they had walked into. The door slammed shut behind them, locking them inside with a force that shook the walls. Panic surged, but there was no way out. The room was small, windowless, and suffocating, and then they saw it. A shadow moved across the doorway, something tall, too tall to be human. As it stepped forward, the dim light flickered, revealing a figure, its face distorted beyond recognition, its eyes hollow and vacant, as if the very soul had been ripped from it. They froze, their breath caught in their throats. The figure spoke then, its voice low, guttural, and otherworldly. It whispered something they couldn't understand, but the words were clear enough in their meaning. They were trapped. The school had claimed them, and there would be no escape. After what seemed like an eternity, they finally managed to break free from the room, their hearts racing, their bodies trembling with fear. They didn't know how they did it, but somehow they managed to escape the clutches of whatever had been waiting for them inside. They stumbled out into the open air, gasping for breath, their minds reeling from the nightmare they had just lived through. But as they looked back at the school, something felt off. It wasn't over. The school, abandoned as it was, still seemed alive. They could see the dark windows staring back at them, those empty, soulless eyes watching them. The shadow that had pursued them didn't stop. It was still there, still waiting, still watching from the darkness. They may have escaped, but they could never escape what they had seen. The school was far from empty, and whatever it was that had followed them was still there, waiting for the next group of curious souls to wander too close. The school had been sitting empty for over 30 years, abandoned, forgotten, and left to fade into the decay of time. Its once bright halls now hollow, swallowed by shadows, and consumed by the weight of 100 unanswered questions. The air inside is thick, as if the building itself is holding its breath, waiting for something. It feels wrong, like something once alive has slipped away, and all that remains is a hollow shell that never truly rests. Creaking doors open into darkened classrooms, where shattered windows let the wind whisper secrets long lost. The walls, lined with peeling paint and the remnants of forgotten posters, stand silent, as if the very structure is mourning what once was. You can almost feel the weight of the years pressing down on you as you move through the broken space. And as you walk through these ruins, the question lingers in the back of your mind. What caused this place to be abandoned in the first place? Was it just the passing of time, a building left to rot? Or was there something darker at play, something that drove people away and left it to gather dust, locked in its endless, lonely silence? It was during a late-night investigation when things first began to unravel. The team, armed with nothing but flashlights and the curiosity that had already begun to edge into discomfort, stepped into the old building. Each creaking floorboard beneath their feet seemed to echo louder than the last, as if the building itself was protesting their intrusion. The hallways were long, stretching into an abyss of darkness, where shadows shifted even when the lights didn't move. But it wasn't just the silence that weighed heavy in the air. It was something more. The temperature dropped suddenly, an unnatural chill that clung to the skin, creeping beneath jackets and into the bones. You could almost feel it, the cold that wasn't supposed to be there, a sign that something else was waiting in the dark. As they moved deeper into the school, the first sign of something wrong made itself known. A soft whisper, almost imperceptible at first, floated in the air. It wasn't a voice they could recognize, but there was no one around. Just the wind, perhaps, they thought. But then it came again, louder this time, unmistakable. A voice, or something pretending to be one, cutting through the stillness of the night. No footsteps, no breath, just the whisper, soft and distant, but somehow close. And then the walls. They didn't just stand still, they seemed to hum, as though they were alive, vibrating with an energy that couldn't be seen, but could most certainly be felt. It was as if the building had woken up, and it was paying attention to them, to their every move. As the investigation progressed, the air in the school grew heavier, thicker, almost suffocating. The further they went, the more it seemed like the building itself was alive, following their every step. The sound of footsteps began to echo in the distance, faint at first, as if someone was walking just out of sight. But there was no one. No footsteps following them, no other souls to be seen. Only the sound, a growing presence, as if someone, was moving in the dark behind them. Their breaths quickened, the unsettling silence broken only by the rhythmic, solitary footsteps that grew louder, closer with each passing moment. By the time they reached the old gymnasium, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The door to the gym, once a proud entrance to games and cheers, now hung loosely on its hinges, a dark void beyond. As one of them dared to push the door open, the old wood groaned in protest, a screeching sound that seemed to reverberate through the entire building. And then silence. Not a single sound. No footsteps, no whispers. Just an oppressive, almost suffocating stillness that pressed in from all sides. But then something shifted. The shadows inside the gym began to move. Not just the play of light or the shift of the wind, but actual tangible shadows, slithering across the floor and up the walls, twisting and curling in unnatural patterns. The darkness seemed to grow, expand, and then just as quickly pull back. The feeling in the air was no longer just eerie, it was dangerous. Something was there, something that had been waiting, lurking in the gymnasium's emptiness. And then, the cold rush of air that followed them into the gym carried something else, a presence unmistakable and terrifying. It was no longer just the whisper in the hall, or the cold chill of an abandoned place. It was here, in front of them, someone was watching them from the corners of the room. The air seemed to crackle, charged with a suffocating energy that made it difficult to breathe, as though the space itself had become a trap, closing in around them. The tension in the gymnasium was unbearable. Every corner seemed to hide something, and every sound seemed amplified in the eerie quiet. Then, as if the very walls had had enough, a loud crash erupted from the far side of the room, breaking the stillness with an ear-splitting bang. The sound was violent, as though something, or someone, had violently struck the floor. The air was thick with dread, and the team froze, their hearts pounding, as they turned toward the source of the noise. Before they could even make sense of what had happened, the unmistakable sound of heavy breathing filled the gym. Slow, ragged, and wet, like the breath of something large, something alive, and dangerously close. They turned to look, but no one was there. No figure, no shape. Just the suffocating darkness pressing in around them. The sound of breathing grew louder, and then, without warning, the gym's heavy wooden door slammed shut with a force that shook the entire building. The sound was deafening, sending a shiver down their spines as they realized with rising panic they were trapped. The room felt smaller now, as if the very walls were closing in around them. They tried to open the door, but it was useless. The door wouldn't budge. The panic set in as they realized there was no escape. But it wasn't the door that caught their attention next. It was the mirror. A broken, cracked mirror hung on the wall nearby, reflecting the dim light of their flashlights in jagged patterns. The team had no choice but to look, as if something in the reflection was pulling them in. And then in the shattered glass, something moved. At first, it was subtle, almost imperceptible. But there, in the reflection, standing just behind them, was a figure. It was tall, its features obscured by the dim light, but the outline was unmistakable. The shadowy shape stood motionless, watching them. The figure was so close they could feel its presence, yet when they turned around, the space behind them was empty. No one was there. No footsteps, no breathing, just the deafening silence of the gym. And then another crash, this time from the opposite corner of the room, as if the figure was toying with them, playing a game that they didn't understand and couldn't win. The fear that had gripped them moments before was nothing compared to what they felt now. Panic set in, but there was no way out. The heavy door that had slammed shut still refused to open, and the oppressive silence of the gymnasium was now replaced by something far worse. A constant, low hum in the air, like the walls themselves were vibrating with tension. In the distance, the whispers, soft and faint at first, grew louder, more insistent, until they were full-fledged voices. Whispers, laughter, and in the center of it all, the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy dragging like someone or something was walking just behind them, but they couldn't see it. No matter where they turned, nothing. Just the overwhelming feeling that something was creeping ever closer. The walls, once sturdy and rigid, seemed to stretch and bend unnaturally, the halls narrowing and twisting in impossible ways. Every corner they turned revealed another hallway that led to nowhere, only more darkness, more of the suffocating air. It was as if the very building was alive, contorting and shifting, trapping them within its maze. Every step they took seemed to echo back at them, the sounds of their feet growing louder, amplified by the oppressive silence that surrounded them. Their breathing grew heavier as the realization began to sink in. This place was never empty. It had been waiting for someone to wander in, someone to trespass where they were never meant to go. And now they had awakened something that had been lying dormant for years, something that didn't want to be disturbed. The building itself, the air itself, was alive with the memories of those who had once walked these halls, memories that were not content to stay in the past. They were coming to life, and it was clear now, the school wasn't just abandoned, it was haunted by something far older and far darker than any of them could have imagined. The voices in the walls rose to a crescendo, a chorus of agony and whispers, each one more desperate than the last. The shadows grew longer, closer, wrapping themselves around them, and for the first time, they felt something tangible, a presence that wasn't just in their minds. The air was heavy, thick, almost suffocating, and in the distance, through the ever-growing fog of dread, they saw it, a shadow, larger than anything they had seen before, standing at the end of the hall. It didn't move, but it didn't need to. The feeling of being watched, being hunted, was unmistakable. And then, just as suddenly as it had all begun, the floor beneath them buckled, the walls seemed to shake, and the building groaned in protest. As if in response to their presence, the entire structure trembled, alive with something angry, something that had been trapped inside for far too long. By some miracle, they managed to find the strength to push through the terror, to force their way out of the nightmarish maze of hallways. The door that had once been locked now seemed to swing open on its own, and with hearts pounding, they fled the school, never once looking back. They thought they had escaped, thought that the nightmare was finally over. The echoes of the whispers, the feeling of being hunted, faded as they made their way out into the cold night air. The horrors of the abandoned school were now behind them, or so they thought. That night, as they lay in bed, trying to shake off the remnants of the terror, they heard it. At first, it was so faint they thought it was a trick of the mind, just the wind, perhaps, or their imagination playing games after what they'd experienced. But no, the whisper came again, soft and almost tender, as though it was calling them, beckoning them back. The voice, distant but unmistakable, floated in from the shadows of the room. It was almost comforting, a lullaby in a place of nightmares. They sat up, heart racing, listening intently. Was it just their mind playing tricks on them? A result of the fear that still clung to them? Or had something followed them home? The room felt colder, and a sudden, unsettling silence filled the space. As they nervously looked around, their gaze fell to the mirror across from their bed. The reflection was clear, but there was something off. It was them, yes. But the reflection? It wasn't quite right. Their own face, distorted slightly, seemed to twist in a way that didn't match their movements. They moved their hand to touch their face, and the figure in the mirror followed, but it didn't move exactly the same way. The eyes in the reflection lingered a moment too long, their expression almost too still, too empty. In a split second, the reflection blinked, but it wasn't them. The eyes that stared back were cold, vacant, as though something else had taken over, something far older, something that had never truly left the school. The whisper came again, louder this time, echoing in their mind. "Come back to me." The words sent a chill down their spine. Was this just a lingering side effect of their nightmarish experience? Or had the malevolent force of the school somehow followed them home, claiming a piece of them? Was it inside the mirror? Or was it already inside them? The answers remained elusive, and with each passing moment, the terror began to sink in deeper. Was this truly over? Or had the school's grip on them only just begun? Westfield High wasn't always a place of fear. It was once filled with the sound of laughter, the buzz of young minds eager to learn. The halls were alive with energy, and the classrooms were where dreams were nurtured. But those days are long gone. One fateful night, everything changed. It happened so suddenly. One evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, the school, like every other day, seemed just as it should be, silent but peaceful. Then, in the dead of night, something unexplainable occurred. When the doors were opened the next morning, it was as if the entire school had vanished into thin air. No one saw a thing. No one heard a thing. Teachers, students, janitors gone. All of them, without a single sign of a struggle or even a trace of what had transpired. It was as if they had been swallowed whole by the school itself. For months, people speculated. Was it some kind of tragedy? A mass disappearance? A curse? But every theory fell flat. There were no bodies, no evidence of foul play. Only the unsettling emptiness that now haunted Westfield High. And after the initial confusion, the school was abandoned, left to rot and decay as it had no answers to offer. Now, for over 5 decades, it sits in eerie silence. Its windows shattered, its walls cracked and worn with time. But no one has dared to enter, not even the bravest of souls. Some say it's a place where time stands still, where the air is thick with the memories of those who vanished. But others believe there's something more, something darker. Years passed, and the stories of Westfield High faded into the background, whispered about only in hushed tones. It had become little more than a ghost in the town's memory, a forgotten relic of a place that no one dared to revisit. But as fate would have it, one night, a small night crew was assigned to clean the school. The task was simple: sweep up the debris, clear the dust, and leave before morning light. But what they didn't know, what no one could have prepared them for, was that they would encounter something far worse than just a few abandoned rooms. The night started off as any other. The crew arrived late, under the dim glow of the streetlights. The school was as still as it had been for decades, silent, empty, and cold. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, but that was nothing unusual. They got to work, mopping the floors, clearing debris from the hallways. At first, they laughed at the eerie sounds that seemed to echo down the corridors. Must be the wind, they told each other. But the longer they stayed, the harder it was to dismiss the strange noises. At first, it was just the creaking of the old building settling, the sound of the wind sweeping through cracks in the walls. But then something shifted. A door slammed shut somewhere down the hall, the kind of sound that reverberates through the bones. But when they went to check, the hallway was empty. No wind, no drafts. Just silence. Still, they shrugged it off. Just an old building, they thought. But then the noises grew louder. The unmistakable sound of footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Footsteps that echoed through the empty halls as if someone, or something, was walking right behind them. They stopped, frozen. The air was thick with the same oppressive silence that had greeted them when they first arrived. But this time it was different. This time they weren't alone. They turned, expecting to find one of their crew members standing there, but no one was in sight. Just the endless stretch of dark hallway, with the echo of footsteps that didn't belong to them. As the crew pressed on, the feeling of unease grew heavier, clinging to them like the dust in the air. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallways, but it was the shadows that seemed to move with them, watching, waiting. One of the workers, a young man named Tom, stepped into an old janitor's closet, hoping to find something to distract him from the mounting terror. But as soon as he opened the door, he was hit with a wave of unease, a cold rush of air that seemed to come from nowhere. Inside the closet, there was nothing remarkable. Just a few rusted cleaning tools and some old, discarded items. But then, as his flashlight flickered over the shelves, something caught his eye, an old, tattered journal buried beneath layers of dust. Tom reached for it, hesitating for a moment, but curiosity overpowered his caution. He opened the journal, and his stomach churned as he began to read. The pages were filled with disturbing, incoherent scribbles. Haphazard scrawlings, frantic and wild, some of it barely legible. But the most chilling entry was written in large, bold letters. "The whispers won't stop. They're watching. Don't stay here." Tom's heart raced. The words in the journal were like a warning, but it was too late to turn back now. He shared the journal with the rest of the crew, and as they continued deeper into the school, the air grew thicker, more oppressive. The whispers that had started as faint murmurs in the distance were now unmistakable, creeping into their minds, making their skin crawl. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. It wasn't until they reached the old gymnasium that the true horror revealed itself. The walls of the gym were crumbling, the floor covered in dust and debris. But as they explored, something caught their attention. A series of strange markings on the walls, symbols that seemed almost ritualistic. It was then that they realized Westfield High was built on something much older. The ground beneath their feet was not just earth, it was a burial ground, an ancient resting place for those who had been forgotten by time. The school's foundation sat atop a dark history, a land stained with blood, and the spirits of the long dead had never left. The voices they'd been hearing, they were not just echoes. They were the restless spirits, trapped in this place for eternity, tormented by the school that had been built on their graves. The crew finally fled the building, their hearts pounding in their chests as they scrambled to escape. They thought it was over, thought they had outrun whatever had haunted Westfield High for so many years. But that night, as they returned to their homes, the feeling of being watched never left them. It lingered, gnawing at their minds, a constant presence that wouldn't go away. Each of them, one by one, experienced the same strange occurrence. Every time they looked into a mirror, whether it was at home, in the car, or at work, their own reflection was off. It wasn't just the lighting or their tired eyes. No, something was wrong. Their reflections seemed to twist and distort, as if they weren't entirely their own. As if someone else, something else, was standing behind them. And just before they turned away, each of them swore they saw something, or someone, lurking in the reflection, waiting, watching, ready to step into the world beyond the glass. So, what do you think happened at Westfield High? What do you believe is really hiding in those empty halls? Have you ever encountered something you couldn't explain? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts with us. And don't forget to subscribe, because the truth, it's out there. And next time, we might uncover something even darker. Hit the subscribe button now.